All right, so you clicked on the thumbnail, clicked on the video with a thumbnail that says that the kicker stunk, and we're gonna wait on that news. Okay, we're gonna wait. I'm gonna give you the positive stuff first. And first positive is just attendance. It was awesome to be there in a stadium at SoFi Stadium with Chargers fans for the first time, like in an actual game setting, if you will. And I would say it was about a 25% to about a third turnout. Like it looked, pretty solid for a Sunday scrimmage, midday. Didn't really mean anything. And for an event that I really think the Chargers poorly advertised as being open to all fans, I had so many people on Twitter or even on YouTube asking, "Hey, can I get tickets? Does anybody else have any tickets? Can I buy tickets?" And people are giving tickets for giveaways. They were free. They were free. Now, I think season ticket holders had priority, so I just had tickets already. But you can go out and just get tickets. You didn't need to, win a giveaway or buy these tickets like some people were trying to do, which is really sad. But the turnout was still really, really good. And it was awesome to see Chargers fans out there. I think for anyone who, is worried about the number of Chargers fans who can make it to a game, I'd say you should feel good. Although now the tickets were free, so I'm sure more people can make it to a free game than a $400 ticket game. But as far as the quantity of Chargers fans, I think you should feel pretty good about your fan base. The Steelers and Raiders games will probably still be tough, but it is what it is. All right, so the number one takeaway for me in terms of the positives, I had said that Justin Herbert had been off in the times that I'd seen him, and it seemed like he was just kind of off. And I don't mean it in like he was terrible, but that he, like a B plus kind of grade, and again, that's not bad at all. But it's Justin Herbert, your franchise quarterback. You want to see how he's doing in practice. And there were just some throws he was kind of off in the times that I'd seen him. In the times that I did not watch him, reportedly, he had amazing days. The last time that I had watched him, the offense did not score a single touchdown. The next day, when I didn't watch him, he scored like 3. So, luck of the draw, I suppose. So to me, like my impression is that he had been kind of off during camp because that's what I'd seen. Was not the case against the scrimmage. He was incredible. And it was a combination of, great reads. And I get Daniel Jeremiah and Matt Money Smith, they were kind of doing the play-by-play and the recap. And Daniel Jeremiah was just saying, hey, look, Herbert, looked that way, realized he could have had the interception or could have thrown an interception, found the other receiver and threw a perfect strike. Like the processing was there. The throws were quick. They were crisp. The ball was everywhere. It was either side of the field, the middle of the field, towards the boundaries, whatever you needed to be, Herbert could do it. Bootlegs, play action, from shotgun, whatever you wanted him to do, he nailed it. And in general, the wide receivers and the tight ends just destroyed the secondary. And, I don't know how it's going to play moving forward, but the Chargers, while they don't have like a Calvin Johnson type of just elite dominant number one or prime Julio Jones, if you will, they do have a collection of very, very talented and versatile players. It was tough to see, not tough to see, but it's tough for Asante Samuel Jr. to try to cover the receivers because it's Keenan Allen, first off, who's impossible to cover as is. We saw, Michael Davis put him in a blender in practice the other day. So first he tries to cover Keenan Allen and he has some success. But then, Keenan Allen gets the best of him a couple of times. And then he has to cover Mike Williams. And the difference between Williams and Samuel Jr. is significant. Talent or not, at the end of the day, height is height, size is size. And Williams just was able to beat him. I don't know. I need to watch the play again. I don't know exactly how Williams got open, but the only thing I saw was that Samuel Jr. was trailing. And so I don't know if there's miscommunication or if Williams just beat him or what, but yeah. So the wide receivers and the tight ends had a really, really good day today. And it was just very hard for the secondary to keep up. On the flip side, if you want to talk about positives, the defensive line, the front seven actually really, really did well against this Chargers front. And again, it's tough when you're watching the offense play the defense because you want to cheer, but then do you also kind of boo the unit that didn't do well? The offense is scoring at will. What's going on with the defense? So the defensive line and the front side, I keep saying that, the front seven looked really, really good. And honestly, on the day, like I could say that they had probably close to 10 sacks. Now, it's difficult to gauge exactly how many sacks there were because it's what Staley calls thud tempo, where you hit the guy, you get an arm on the guy, prepare to tackle, but you don't actually knock the guy over. You don't bring these guys to the ground. So Justin Jones getting a full arm and looking like he'll sack Justin Herbert is not the same as bringing down and moving Justin Herbert in game. But I'm pretty sure they got close to 10 sacks. And so Chris Rumph going against, I think, Storr Norton, and is it Darius Harper? It's definitely Harper. I forget his first name, but the third string tackle. He had 3 sacks. I thought it was 2.5, but Daniel Jeremiah ended up saying it was a full 3. I wasn't sure if he had split 1 sack or not. So 3 sacks for Chris Rumph, and he was definitely the star of the day. Again, not playing against Brian Bulaga, not playing Rashawn Slater, but 3 sacks, and that is going to get him some playing time for sure. He was, I think, probably the best performance of the day from any Chargers player. So he had 3. I believe Kyler Fackrell had 2. Justin Jones again. So Justin Jones, I thought, had sacked Justin Herbert, and they let the play go, and Justin Herbert had a 20-yard scramble. But Justin Jones, not only did I think he did it, he thought he did it. He was pointing at the spot where he had sacked Herbert and kind of frustrated they didn't give him credit for that sack. So I tend to agree with him. I think that was a sack. So he had a sack. Jerry Tillery had a sack. Mosu had a sack. And, and that's just from what I can remember when I go through the tape and watch, what these guys did. I'm sure I'll find more in there. And so it was a really, really good day for the front seven. And also for the, for the linebackers, not necessarily, I don't think there was any sacks involved in there, but, this defense is very much so primed to stop the pass. And so you're always wondering, how do these guys look against the run? Well, the linebackers were amazing. The linebackers, particularly Kaiser White, I think, and Drew Tranquil, were just, run stops, tackles for loss in the backfield. It was a really, really good showing from them. And I was so surprised at just how, look, I guess the Chargers linebackers are pretty athletic, so I shouldn't be surprised. But still, considering this offensive line, I was surprised how well they were able to, clamp down in the run game. So that was really, really impressive. And the other guy I'll have to go watch this for sure to look at, how he did in coverage. But I was encouraged by Nasir Adderley, because you have the 2 high safety look, you have to, your goal is to stop the pass. But when it's time to run the football, and when they are running the football, that safety has to come downhill and stop the run and play the run. So you have to help out and win that numbers game. And I think Nasir Adderley did that. And I was really encouraged by that. That was one of the things, if not the main thing I was concerned about heading into the season. Because Derwin James, I have no doubts that he's going to make an impact in the run game. Nasir Adderley, not as much. And there were some games last season, like I think the Broncos game, where he either ran into Kenneth Murray or something and let Philip Lindsay escape for that big gain. And so, watching him at least come downhill to attempt to make the tackle and getting that pop, again, they can't tackle, but seeing that pop was really, really good. What other impressive things happened? Oh, Austin Proehl. I heard that, or someone had said that they were not buying the hype of Austin Proehl. And I don't know if that was a good time to short Austin Proehl's stock, because Proehl went ahead and I think he had either 4 or 5 catches on 5 or 6 targets. The only catch he did not have was one batted at the line where he was wide open in the middle anyway. So there was a shot that Proehl was, 5 receptions, 6 receptions on the game. And again, he is still punt returner number 1. And so you just can't not get this guy involved. He is involved, and he's more than just the number 4 option in the second. Now, he is with the second team. Like, he's not sneaking into the first team, really, barring a couple times in training camp with the guys that were hurt when Guyton and Johnson were down. But, he is still a very, very reliable wide receiver, I guess 6 at this point. And, it shows. I have yet to see him catch less than 3 passes in any day that I've been there. If you told me he had 30 catches in training camp so far, I wouldn't be surprised. And they're not going for 20 yards a pop. He's probably got, 30 catches and, 200 yards or something like that. But, he's making an impact, and they're targeting him with intention. And I think that's the thing that, and we'll talk about Justin Jackson too in a bit, but, that's the thing that makes me think that he will stick around on the roster. It's not that he's just a guy in a progression. No, they are running him, on a slide route behind the line of scrimmage and off to the flat. And he is, then they are targeting him immediately. So it's not that they're just including him in the offense. They're finding ways to get him the ball. And so that's why I think he sticks around. And again, he continues to impress. Another one was Steven Anderson. He is all over the place. He was out wide. He was in the backfield. He was lined up in inline tight end. And he was doing everything. There was one particular play where I believe he had to help out in the play action game. Or no, sorry, he was lead blocking in the run game. And he, hole opens, Steven Anderson goes through, and who's there? It's Derwin James. What does he do? He pops him pretty good. Like Steven Anderson gave him a good pop and helped open up the run game on that one. And then he was blocking inline tight end. He was it Chris Rumph? Is either Chris Rumph or Emeka Egbule, but he pops him really good, releases for a route, catches the ball, and then absolutely truck sticks one of the DBs. Like I think if it were live, that DB would have he would have ended up on the ground and possibly dead, because that was a hard hit. And that's that's Steven Anderson, yards after catch kind of guy. He's a really tough guy to bring down. Watch that Denver game. I think he broke or evaded like 5 or 6 tackles. That's just him. So, in terms of rotations and competition, I do think Steven Anderson will stick around as the 4th tight end on this roster. He just plays way too much with the first team, and he has such a multiple role. He has so many roles that he's going to stick around. So I would bet on that. Okay, so let's get into the negatives. And I think the most obvious negative is the headline, and that's the kicker did not do well. I'm not going to go over all of it, but yes, Badgley was booed, and it was kind of a smattering of boos at first. And by the 3rd miss, it was a loud set of boos. And you might have thought that Raiders fans were in the building at that point, because everyone was just booing their player. And I felt really bad, but he missed 3. He went 3 for 6, which was not good. And then Vizcaino comes out and goes 4 for 6. So not as bad. But again, still, after watching Badgley go 3 for 6, Vizcaino goes 4 for 6. And you're like, oh boy. And then Kessman comes out and goes 2 for 6. So, and the highlight of the day, if you will, is Michael Badgley went out for, I think they were in a 2-minute drill situation. So Badgley goes out for the field goal, and Staley ices him. And so, he gets iced. So he takes that practice kick anyway. And I kid you not, the kick went, here's the field goal post. The kick went that away towards the left front pylon of the end zone. You just picture the end zone, picture the field goal post, picture the pylon. That's where it went. And I'm not talking that it sailed over that pylon. I'm talking it was a line drive that barely made it over the line's head, that bounced and headed towards that pylon. Now, in the actual kick, which I think was a 54-yarder, Badgley made it. So that's good. But again, it's just, oh man, like watching Vizcaino in practice kick that line drive to finish practice, that stunk. And then Badgley kicking that line drive, again, not an actual kick. It was a frozen fake kick, practice kick. But for him to do that too, it's just really concerning. So the Chargers have a kicker problem, and it needs to get fixed. And at this point, if it comes down to it, Vizcaino is still in the lead for this job because he missed the least, and he still has the strongest leg. So he'll still get the job. So that's that. And then, if the defensive line has, 10 sacks, then somebody has to be giving up those sacks, right? So the offensive line, it wasn't great. I think that there were times where, the defense benefited from having just more talent than the offensive line, particularly, Chris Rumph beating Darius Harper twice and Storm Norton once. It's Harper and Norton, but Rumph is a rookie 4th round pick. So good for him. No shade on him. I'm just saying he didn't go against Balaga or Slater. So the backups didn't look that great. If I'm not mistaken, Rashawn Slater, and again, I'll look at this, so don't hold me to it. I'll look at the tape again. But Slater did give up a sack to Fackrell, I believe. And I do believe Arjun sent me a clip, and I believe that he missed a stunt again. And Fackrell either got the pressure or was responsible for the sack. I wasn't quite sure. So Slater wasn't all that great in the pass protection game either. I don't recall too much of an issue. It just pressures, from the other starting offensive linemen, and then just a lot of sacks given up by some of the backup rotational guys. So, not the best showing for the offensive line. The run game wasn't great either, again. So, but again, credit to the defense as well. You got to give somebody credit too. So yeah, defense played well. Offense, the front 7 played better than the offensive line, but Herbert and the receivers and tight ends played better than the secondary. So in general, it was almost like a draw. It would have been kind of like a give and take. I think Lombardi and Staley were about even, if you want to look at it that way. And the last injury, well, there it is. The last negative is injuries. And fortunately, it didn't seem too bad, but Kenneth Murray did get hurt. He was trying to tackle Jared Cook on the sideline, and he just tripped. And, I don't know what happened. I don't know if he was just trying to stop himself or what, but he trips and he is on the ground. And I'm tweeting and I felt so bad tweeting this because I know Chargers fans can't watch. You're just waiting for news. And it was like the third or fourth play of the game. Kenneth Murray is down. He tripped on the sideline, and people were just like, "Oh no!" I felt so bad. But so there's two sidelines. There's a defensive sideline and an offensive sideline. It's kind of how they were doing the teams, to the two opposing sides, if you will. And so Kenneth Murray had tripped and fallen on the offensive side, and he was there for about a third of the scrimmage. He did not get back to the defensive side for a good while. He was up on a table at one point. They tried walking him around. He had to sit on a bench because he couldn't walk around. And so I wouldn't think it was, blown ACL or anything or broken ankle, but it wasn't good. And so he was only in the game for 4 plays, if you will. And then the other one was Corey Linsley, which I completely missed. I had no idea he was hurt. And, eventually it was shown that, after the scrimmage, he was on the field with his kids or somebody's kids. And he's walking around, no boot, no ice, no brace, no wraps or anything. So, whatever the issue was, seemed pretty minor, but I didn't really notice it during the scrimmage because Quessenberry and Linsley rotate anyway. Linsley's a a vet, so he doesn't need to be out there. Kind of this sort of in the same way, although not as much as Bulaga rotates with a Storm Norton or Trey Pipkins. So I figured, okay, Quessenberry's out there because Lindsey's a vet. So he apparently got hurt. No idea what it is. By the time you hear this video, I'm sure they'll come up with something. But that's pretty much it for the negatives. The injuries turned out okay, and I think the offensive line is just still trying to gel, and I think it'll be better. But maybe when I watch the tape, it'll actually be better than I thought it was. So let's get into some rotations and competitions here. I'm just going to go down the list. Vizcaino, he's still kicker number 1. I don't think he has a shot of being, up-seated by anybody in camp right now because Badgley and Kessman both did worse, and Vizcaino has the better leg. So if he has the leg up in kickoffs, and he's technically the more accurate kicker, he still has the leg up. So there it is. Another one is Justin Jackson. Now, when it came down to the first team, there were really only 2 primary backs. It was obviously Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson. Joshua Kelly, I think, sprinkled in there a couple of times, but he was like the main team 2 back. Joshua Kelly was like, everyone is firmly exactly where I would think they'd be and where I had them in my last roster prediction. Eckler, Justin Jackson, RB2, and then Joshua Kelly RB3. So Justin Jackson is pretty clearly making this roster, barring an injury, because he's very dynamic. You can tell in the outside zone runs that they have, in the passing game, he's just dynamic. He's more shifty, he just is close enough to Eckler that, I think he's worth keeping around, even if injury history is there. And even if you have to pick between him and Roundtree, I think I'd rather take a guy who's more like Austin Eckler than a guy who's more like Joshua Kelly, right, in Roundtree. So if it came down to 3 running backs, it is definitely Eckler, Jackson, and Kelly. And that's very firm right now because Bradwell and Roundtree rotated as RB4, and Bradwell is also the guy that starts on special teams. So, if I'm being completely honest with you, Roundtree is probably RB5 right now. Bradwell did get the first crack. So when there's a battle, and we'll talk about a couple other battles too, when there's like a legit battle going on, it looked like they split things into halves. So Bradwell kind of got that first crack, first half, if you will, of the scrimmage, with some sprinkling in from Roundtree. And then Roundtree got like the second half with some sprinkling of Bradwell. So that's kind of how they're doing it, I think, at least in the scrimmage. So Bradwell was first on the field as the RB4, and he was also starting on special teams. So we'll see how that goes. Like I mentioned earlier, I think they'll keep all 4 tight ends. I don't think that's going to change. At this point, each one is so involved as a blocker and as a receiver, well, except maybe Jared Cook. But, Cook is there for one reason. But for the other 3, they're also involved as the blocker and receiver that I think they're all going to be kept. They all do something or have enough of an investment in them that they're going to stick around. Another important one. Oh, another standout of the day. Ogbong Bamiga, and I don't think he had like an amazing scrimmage or anything, but he made some plays. I think the most important thing though is that when Kenneth Murray went down, Ogbong Bamiga came in and started some plays with the ones, and so it was Ogbong Bamiga and Tranquil, or Ogbong Bamiga and White. It seems like if I'm trying to think of a way to parse that out in my head, that Murray is kind of that chaser of the football, run stopper, athletic fly around guy, whereas White and Tranquil are your more interchangeable coverage guys. So I think when Murray went down, they went with someone like Ogbongbemiga, who is not good in coverage or not known for being good in coverage, and a guy that is more of a see ball, get ball kind of guy. And so they put him in there and then just rotated Tranquil and White next to him. But Ogbongbemiga, when it came down to the second unit, he was so again, like I talked about with the RB4 battle, he was the first linebacker, like the primary linebacker in there with I want to say Cole Christiansen. And so he was the guy that was in there as the starter for the first half, and then a sprinkling of Nick Niemann. And then when the second half came around, it was Nick Niemann starting and a sprinkling of Ogbongbemiga. So I'm very curious to see how this shakes out because, it looks like Ogbongbemiga and Niemann are fighting for, if not LB4, they are fighting for a roster spot. I do think it is possible that Niemann is cut, although, we'll see. But then Christiansen is the guy who starts on special teams. So it's very hard to tell exactly where everybody's going to be. I think linebackers in particular, they need that preseason game. They need those preseason games. They need to be able to tackle somebody. They need to put up those stats, put on that tape. So you kind of have an understanding of what their impact is. And as well as special teams, go out and make those special teams tackles and those tackles on defense. And you start to accumulate and figure out, who is going to be the actual, who wins the job. So we'll see. I do think there's an outside shot. They do keep one more linebacker than we're thinking. I think that would kind of be a waste. But, if special teams is improved significantly by having two more linebackers than I thought they would, or one more linebacker than I thought they would, then go for it. If they want to keep Niemann and Ogbongbemiga and Christiansen, have at it. What else? So DeLuca was in there, and DeLuca had a couple of really good plays, including almost picking off Easton Stick to finish the scrimmage. His hands were on the ball. I think he just body caught it and it bounced off. But, he read it and was almost there for a pick. So he's benefiting from Mark Webb being out. I don't think DeLuca makes the roster necessarily, but I've been hoping for it and pushing for it. But with Webb being out right now, it's a hamstring injury. Those can be tricky. And DeLuca gets a lot of reps with those safeties, and he is. So it's James and Adderley as safety 1 and 2, and then it's usually Gilman and Webb as safeties 3 and 4. But with Webb out, it's been DeLuca, and DeLuca just dominated those snaps. So DeLuca right now is safety 4 with Webb being out. And considering, he looked pretty solid and made some plays, there's a chance he makes the roster too, even just as insurance, because, the team could use some more insurance. And that's kind of how I thought he would make the roster anyway. So he benefits quite a bit. The other one is Chase Daniel is firmly quarterback 2. It's not even close. I know that we all at this point figure that Daniel is quarterback 2, but Stick was bad. And I don't want to say everything was his fault. I don't have the recordings of how the plays went. So I couldn't tell you that, why 4 or 5 of his passes were batted down. But I think at some point when 4 or 5 of your passes are being batted down, I got to think that some of it's on you. Maybe staring somebody down, being too predictable, whatever it is, or to wind up. So Stick wasn't very good. The offense just does not move with him. I didn't see Costello throw, although I left a little bit early, so maybe there was something there. But yeah, Stick is it was rough. And then finally, the offensive line rotation. So starting 5 is as expected. But then, as I've kind of mentioned previously, the backups are, Norton and Pipkins kind of flip sides on occasion, but just, for the sake of, trying to paint the offensive line. So it's Norton, then Brendan Hymas as left guard, Scott Quesenberry at center, Tyree St. Louis at right guard, and then Pipkins at right tackle. Again, the tackles can kind of flip, but the interior, that looks exactly how it's going to be. And the tackles, that looks about right. And honestly, considering the Balaga and considering, I guess we haven't seen Rashawn Slater in the league, and considering you probably don't want to move Matt Filer out of his left guard spot, I think it's possible that they keep 2 tackles because it could really come down to that. They really could use 2 tackles on the roster. So we'll see. Anyway, that's it for me. That's sort of a quick-ish recap. I just wanted to talk about some of the things that I noticed. But it was a really, really solid day overall. I think going back and watching the film of the first team offense and defense is going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned and check that out. Thanks. So made it to the end, and there's my mistake. Take care, guys. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.